So we do have not only new options for warlocks, but we have two new subclasses. One of them is one of my favorite ones. It's got a lot of tentacles, also some teeth. It's the Fathomless. Can you tell me a little bit about this new subclass?
This subclass in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything is all about creating a bond with some kind of entity that lurks deep in the bottom of the sea, or perhaps is floating somewhere in the elemental plane of water, or perhaps even in a big vat of goo somewhere beyond the stars. Wherever this thing is, it is a kraken-like creature that gives the warlock the ability to tap into sort of this watery, slightly horrific power, including the ability to summon up a spectral tentacle that can attack people for them. So for anyone who really wants to delve into that sort of corner of cosmic horror that is both cosmic but also very much here, because it's about what lurks, deep, deep, deep down in the sea. That is what this subclass is all about. And of course, as is so often the case with Warlock patron options, this one could also be imagined as non-scary. You could imagine that somewhere down at the bottom of the sea, there is this benevolent entity simply seeking out warlocks who will do their benevolent will out there on the surface world, or perhaps under the sea, because some D&D campaigns do take place underwater, or at least some adventures do. And so, as is so often the case with warlock options, the patron who you form this bond with could be somebody very scary or villainous, but they could also be benevolent. And then one of the fun things, of course, about these connections that warlocks create with their patron is the warlock is not required to in any way share their patron's sort of moral compass. We see this with warlocks who form a bond with, say, the fiend patron. That doesn't mean the warlock has to be fiendish. They might actually be using fiendish power to undermine fiends in the D&D multiverse. Similarly, if the warlock who forms a bond with the Fathomless, this could be a scary tentacled entity that wants to devour the world, yet the warlock is using its power, perhaps even to undermine its dangerous goals.
Yeah, I like that. We've talked at length about playing against type, and that's an enjoyable thing to be using your patron's power against them, because it's very much, I think you tend to play it as a gift, like it is given with the assumption you would do something in exchange, but once that deal is done, the power is yours, right?
There is no requirement in the warlock class that you be a faithful servant to your patron. You actually decide, as the player of the warlock, what the nature of that bond is. Perhaps you have a great relationship with your patron. Some other warlocks might have sort of shaken hands, or in this case, shaken a tentacle, and walked off with power and never look back. There's a tremendous amount of storytelling flexibility here, not only in the Fathomless, but with really any patron option in the Warlock, where the Warlock gets to decide how much do I reflect my patron? Am I a friend to what their goals are? Am I an opponent of my patrons? Are we sort of frenemies? Sometimes we like each other and sometimes we don't. You could also imagine, especially playing a warlock who's connected to this fathomless entity, you could also have a story of maybe your ultimate goal is at the end of your adventuring career to vanish beneath the waves and join your patron in whatever watery realm they work in.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah. And here I actually have very much on my mind Lovecraft story, the Shadow over Innsmouth, which ends with vanishing into this twilit kingdom beneath the sea.
Yeah.
And it's both sort of wondrous but also very unnerving. And I also hope with the tentacle or at higher levels with the Fathomless, where you summon up like this devouring maw that you could even conceive of as actually belonging to your patron. You can also decide as you play, am I being transformed by this? Do I have somewhere on me a vestigial tentacle or two? Warlocks have a lot of storytelling playground to romp around on as they think about, what does this say about me? Being, in this case, connected to this creature whose mind I might not even understand, and might not even be able to understand. In this way, the Fathomless is a bit of a sibling to the Great Old One, one of the patrons in Player's Handbook. But whereas, again, that emphasizes a strange alien entity beyond the stars that confers the kinds of psychic powers in D&D that are often associated with far realm entities, this one is, again, much more about that thing down there, not only possibly at the bottom of the sea, but maybe there's a vortex that leads to its realm at the bottom of the lake that's just outside of town.
Yeah.
And so this entity has the potential to be much nearer than, say, a Great Old One, who you might only ever hear strange whispers from starlight or moonlight. Here, you might hear the whispers of your patron every time you swim. Every time you're submerged in water. Perhaps this being is telling you strange things, or even the DM could use this patron as essentially a quest giver to send you on various bizarre errands in whatever world your campaign is taking place in.
It's a very creepy thing if every time you put your head below water, you can hear the whispering.
Yes.
Or you end up with a warlock who's just shoving their head into barrels of water all the time.
But again, you could imagine the Fathomless as a benevolent, ancient orca or something who, or a giant whale of some other sort who you hear their beautiful whale song, beneath the waves, and perhaps you understand it.
Or maybe that's what you're telling yourself. Yeah, I'm very excited for this. It's the most summony of the warlocks in many ways, too, because you've got the tentacles, you've got even the capstone, I believe. I'm not sure if it's still the same, but I remember what it was in UA. It's a lot.
Yes, this lets you bring out a whole flurry of tentacles. So it basically, you could describe the Fathomless as the subclass where you start with tentacles at 1, and you can, over the course of the subclass, dial tentacles up to 11.
Right. Eventually, you've got your full patron out to play. You've summoned the full patron.
Pre-order Tasha's Cauldron of Everything on D&D Beyond, and unlock exclusive pre-order rewards, including digital dice.